So my quarantine procedure lasts for about 6 months. If it's a juvenile, they'll get tested once, especially if it's a juvenile where I know how they've been kept and where they're coming from. If it's a juvenile from like a larger facility where things are just getting mixed together and stuff like that, I would recommend two nidovirus tests, one upon intake and one at the end of your 6 month quarantine period. If it's an adult, you need three tests. You need one at your intake, you need one at the halfway point, and you need one at the very end, especially if that animal's a retired breeder. Is this expensive? Yes. Are we paying hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars? Like I've seen ball pythons go for like, upwards of $50,000 to $100,000 for a singular snake. And people are like nervous about spending $100 on a nidovirus test. And
yeah, it's funny.
I always say it doesn't matter whether this is $100 animal or whether it's a $50,000 animal. If you have pets, you want to make sure you're protecting your collection. And if you're a breeder, you want to make sure that you have a good foundation for your business. So the health of your animals, that's the foundation. And if you start to build your business upon a foundation of sick animals, eventually it's going to just crumble down.
Yeah, because if you think about if you let your breeding operation get too far without doing any testing, then suddenly if you do have an animal that suddenly, like your story, hey, you sent me an animal with Nido, and then that breeder has to go, wow, am I going to test 10,000 or 1,000 animals, for example? Maybe not 10,000, but maybe 1,000 animals. And if I am going to test them and they come back positive, do I have to euthanize this entire operation? So it puts you in a really tough position if you don't start with a proper foundation, like you said. That's a perfect way of describing it.
And it's hard now too, because I've spoken with the breeder that I got Darth from. There's been a resolution there, and we've moved forward really positively. But I've spoken with him and he says, I have 2,000 animals. What do I do? Because it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to test all these animals. So at that point, I just say disease mitigation is your best way to go about it. It's hard to test all of those animals. If you have anything that's sick, at that point, you want to test those. But for the most part, it's hard. You already have all of your established adults. So I said, what you need to be doing is protecting the next generation, because nidovirus does not transmit vertically. So the only time it would transmit vertically is if we have maternal incubation happening. And that's where you have the parent in direct exposure with the eggs because they're sitting on them. But if we take the eggs away, like we do 99% of the time, then we don't have that transmission. So those babies will hatch out and they'll be perfectly fine. So a separation of the juveniles to the adults is paramount. And in my own personal collection, it's very rare that we bring in a lot of snakes. We maybe bring in like 1 to 2 per year. At this point, I'm kind of done. 10's a lot for me. Okay. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how people do like 200 of them or whatever. But for me, we have that 6-month quarantine. We do the allotted amount of tests, depending whether it's a juvenile or an adult. And then it can be integrated into the main collection, but I still make sure that that animal is done last until it has been here. Like even Tangerine, he's at the very top of my Freedom Breeder rack, because that way, if he breathes, the air goes out the top, it doesn't go on another one. And then he's actually my last snake to get done because he was my last one to come in. So it's just about thinking ahead with this stuff. And I feel like we're not in a position any longer where it can just be, we're bringing in snakes, we're having a good time, like we're bringing in 20 a year. We can't do that. There has to be a little bit more thought process going into the safety of these animals and the security of your pre-existing collection.
Yeah, that's very well said. And then for us Canadians, maybe you could just quickly, you don't have to go through the whole story, but maybe you could just talk about how you were able to establish this testing facility at Guelph University.